Welcome to the Tech Meets Mental Health interview series. In this series, our host, Professor Skip Rizzo, will be engaging in dialogue with various experts in the digital mental health field across the course of the series. Today, Professor Rizzo will interview our amazing speaker, Vijay Ravindran. You may know him from his work with Floreo, the first behavioral therapy metaverse. The Tech Meets Mental Health series is presented by Cognitive Leap. Cognitive Leap is a pioneer in the area of digital diagnostic and therapeutic systems designed to address ADHD and other cognitive and mental health conditions. Leveraging advances in virtual reality and using mobile, web-based applications, Cognitive Leap takes a human-centric, clinician-driven approach to create and deliver assessment and intervention tools. Our company has a strong research and development team with world-renowned experts who focus on neurology, cognition, psychology, engineering, and artificial intelligence. We are completing work on an FDA study for the approval of our virtual reality classroom diagnosing ADHD in children. Our expert in virtual reality and today's host is Professor Skip Rizzo. Skip Rizzo is a professor at USC and director of medical virtual reality. He serves as an advisor and chief science officer for Cognitive Leap, exploring methods to address attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in children. Today, our guest is Vijay Ravindran, who is an accomplished entrepreneur and technology executive whose career has spanned both digital commerce and news media. He has a son whose experience in virtual reality inspired Floreo. Floreo is a venture-backed startup developing virtual reality learning for people with autism, ADHD, anxiety, and other neurodiverse conditions. Vijay Ravindran and Floreo have developed a VR platform that teaches social, behavioral, communication, and life skills. Floreo's mission is to create the first behavioral therapy metaverse, a virtual world that is safe for learners, equipping them with skills and tools they can apply in their everyday lives. Most recently, Floreo was profiled by the New York Times in their Upstart series, which has created a well-deserved flood of attention to Vijay Ravindran's important work. During the interview, our participants who are joining us from the webinar can directly ask a question through the Q&A window, while participants from the YouTube live stream can also ask questions in the live chat. We will have around 10 minutes at the end to answer your questions. Let's turn it over to Professor Rizzo and Vijay Ravindran.
All righty. So I just have to say that I've been looking forward to this discussion for a long time. Vijay, even though we really only met in the last few months, it was at the healthcare VR event in Nashville. I've been Google stalking you and checking out your work with Floreo, and it's just a project area working with kids with special needs that just near and dear to my heart. And some of my early work, which is part of this Cognitive Leap connection, was in testing out how we could use VR to provide assessment, not so much training at the time, with kids with attention process impairments. And now that project, of course, has evolved and so on. But my heart has, even though I've done a bunch of other stuff, my heart's always been with trying to make these things work for kids, and particularly the populations that you address. So I'm, that's a long way of saying I'm very happy that I've got to meet you in person. And now that we get to have this conversation, I can't wait to learn a lot more about your journey, how you got here, and what you see for the future. So with that, everybody's got an origin tale. What got you mixed up with VR to begin with here?
Yeah, I mean, my journey into starting Floreo is a very personal mission, inspired by my son. I was the chief digital officer at the Washington Post company. We had sold the Washington Post to Jeff Bezos, which was ironic because he had been my reference to the Washington Post because I had been an early engineer at Amazon. And I was working on several responsibilities for what was left of the Washington Post company after the sale. It was renamed Graham Holdings and owned educational companies like Kaplan. And I was thinking about what's next. And I started hearing some of the early buzz for the Oculus DK1. I decided to get, I think the DK2 had just came out, so I bought one. Samsung Gear VR had just come out, so I went to the store and just decided, you know what, I'm going to get deep into this. So I went ahead and just bought an extra cell phone and got the Gear VR running as well, and started trying to really come up to speed on the technology. I have a technology background, and this was an area I was really interested in. And an amazing thing happened. My son saw me playing with the DK2 and the Gear VR and wanted to try it out. And he was 6 at the time, and was starting to have some verbal ability, but was still fairly delayed in his ability to express and where he was in his developmental progress. And so he wanted to try it out, and I put a few starter experiences in front of him. Crossy VR, the Google Street View VR project. There were a couple of dinosaur-related demonstration apps on the Oculus through Steam that I was able to find, and he enjoyed all of it. And then an amazing thing happened where he started pretend playing for the first time in his playroom, playing out some of the things that he had done in those experiences. It ended up being a light bulb moment of what could be with VR. When you're raising a child who has developmental delays, you're carefully following any small area of progress. And when you get over those little progresses, things other parents completely take for granted, you're having a celebration. And so to see that happen and to see VR be potentially a conduit and a catalyst for that, got the idea going. And I started it as a basement project while I was looking for a new job. I was looking at kind of traditional big tech type jobs, and just kept coming back to the possibility and this belief that there's something there that could make a really big difference.
Well, that's just incredible. I really believe that there is some kind of special magic about VR. You can always say, okay, it's a tool for delivering content and it's immersive, you can interact, you can control the stimulus environment. But there's something about creating these realities that I think is very much engaging. And I challenge people sometimes, particularly with these populations, to tell me how you're going to do it otherwise. Some people say, okay, well, engagement with robotic devices, you see that, and with other forms of fixed media and so on. But there's something that unlocks something in people when they have that VR experience. And it was so good to hear that story with your son. How is he now? Where is he at in the VR stuff now? Because I noticed in the New York Times piece that there's a great photo of him raising his hand, interacting in it.
He's he considers himself an employee at this point. Pre-pandemic, he was in so many exhibitions with me where we'd be meeting special needs families and having kids try it out and talk to the technology with the parents. He became quite proficient in coming up to pretty much anyone. He's fearless. World's best salesperson would be like, hey, have you tried out VR? And regardless of how you answer, he'd be like, you need to try out Floreo now, and then would grab your hand, take you to the center. He'd be dragging people back who've tried it, the previous day at the conference or whatever we were at, and too bad you had to try it a second time. But he was always very interested in what's possible. He's inspired a number of different lessons. We have one that takes place at a train station where the child can practice mindfulness. And, like many kids on the spectrum, he found trains to be, something that brought a lot of delight and created a lot of calmness. And so we created a VR train station. We have a number of lessons that take place at the train station. Similarly, in the New York Times piece, what he was demonstrating for the photographer was we have new public transportation lessons on riding the bus, and they're actually aimed at an adult audience through a partnership we have with the Tennessee Department of IDD. and so we are building workforce training with them. So he's really interested in some of the higher level skills as he gets into his teenage years that we're starting to develop for independent living and workforce. I think he was also demonstrating our grocery store lessons where we help someone with a shopping list and understanding the organization.
Well, when I went to your website, I was really kind of blown away by the diversity of content that you have and all the different areas. And as I was going through them, I was saying, damn, I wish I thought of that one. Can you give us a general overview of the types of worlds you've created and what the rationale and objectives are? Yeah.
Absolutely. We're closing in on 200 lessons in our catalog and growing. So these are probably using about 15 to 20 unique environments that we've developed, and we mix and match characters and across those environments. I think the thing I'm really proud of is that I didn't come up with these either. The fact is that once you build a product that professionals and parents can start using out in the real world, and we've been able to start getting amazing feedback, which has led to that catalog being developed. We started with 6 lessons for joint attention, which is the umbrella skill that includes nonverbal gestures and areas like eye contact. And everything since then has flowed from requests from parents or therapists or school districts. And so today our catalog spans areas that are popular in early intervention, like the ability to imitate and the ability to gesture, to social skills in the school, like in the classroom, the semantics of raising your hand and not interrupting others, where to sit, inviting a friend to sit next to you at the lunch table, hallway interactions, making small talk with friends. We can take advantage of VR, allowing a child to actually practice with another child, using the lingo of another child, and in VR through the NPCs that we have. And then we're able to also do safety. So we have bullying lessons, how to cross the street safely. One of the things that's gotten a lot of attention is some of our higher level safety areas, like the police officer interactions, which was inspired by, unfortunately, a horrible incident in 2016, which has been succeeded with multiple horrible incidents since then to only justify the needs that are out there for families who are working on independent living with their kids, but frightened that they do go out there and they're walking about and they have a law enforcement encounter, they won't know how to navigate that in a safe way. Last year, we expanded the catalog into executive function areas. So areas that overlap into ADHD as well, such as impulse control, visual spatial reasoning. And then we also have a growing suite of emotional regulation content. So body regulation, mindfulness, deep breathing, calming experiences. And so, and then the last area is the one I mentioned at the beginning, which is venturing into this adult workforce and independent living space area as well. So we get way more requests than we can build, but we're continuing to build not just the content, but the tools to build the content faster. And so there's a lot of investment at the platform level to create tools to semi-automate and really try to allow new content to be developed faster. And that's been a real piece of the secret sauce, is that we've been able to build scale in our catalog, which has led to more adoption, which has in turn led to more customer feedback and requests and ability for us to continue to build things that fill the needs of the community.
Well, I think that's a key point that you bring up, is building out the authoring tools. That's the thing that hamstrings a lot of VR companies that are in this space, where they build one good world and then they got to go back to starting from zero again to build something else out. If you've got good authoring tools, you can build things on the fly sometimes, with user testing and informed feedback, and change up some of the parameters. I think that's probably a testament to why you've gotten so far in really rather brief period of time. What do you have, like 4 years of development so far, but you've got a large catalog.
Yeah, no, great point. And I think, it feels like an eternity at this point in some ways. And other times it feels like we just got started. The company's officially 6 years old. We took our first venture capital in 2017. And I think, the vision of the authoring side is to get to a place where any school district, any therapist, and eventually any parent can create new content that could be tailored and personalized to help the learner, reach their goals. And, we have quite a bit of work to get from where we are here to that. But we're getting there where we're able to take ideas to fully implemented VR lessons in less than a month at this point. And as we continue to add new environments and new characters, those again become assets that we're able to adopt quickly. And I think the key to that has been to take a software engineering approach to the underlying framework for the therapy and skill building lessons so that we can leverage that as we're creating new lessons.
You mentioned the police encounter application, and that to me was, it fits in a long line of, safety and everyday environment situations, how to deal with a stranger, the bullying stuff and so on. It brings up some old primordial work was done by Dorothy Strickland, who we mentioned earlier before the podcast, who had built out the safety application back in 2001 for helping special needs kids learn how to escape a house that's on fire. But now that we have the capability to do virtual humans in a more credible fashion, there are so many of these kinds of things that these kids can benefit from with this advanced training. And I found the police one to be particularly relevant. I think that's an important area that a lot of times, you don't even think about, or you think about it, you're a parent. But the other element that I really like about what you've developed here is that it's not just an autism spectrum set of applications. These are tools that pretty much any kid could benefit from, this kind of engaging training, and across a wide range of populations.
We've seen that, while as most autism technology companies, you often have one foot in healthcare and one foot in education because of how services are delivered in the US. And as a result, we have customers that sit on the education side versus ones that are on the healthcare side. On the education side, there's a lot more freedom to use tools, independent of a formal health diagnosis. They can do it based on the individualized education plan, or IEP, which often are focused on specific challenge areas independent of that diagnosis that are obstructing learning. And so we've been really heartened by the wide use of the system for kids that are emotionally disturbed, have PTSD, schizophrenic. One of our biggest early successes was with our street crossing lessons, where a school district in Pennsylvania, Chester County intermediate unit, used it with someone who had been struck by a car early in childhood and was afraid to be out on the street, and used the street crossing lessons to build, as an exposure therapy, essentially, to build familiarity with cars and traffic, and that you're safe if you're not on the road. And then we're able to then transition that to generalize it in the real world. And it was one of the first early success stories of the system being used. So there's a wide degree of usage. I think as a startup, the challenge is to rein in, selling to everyone and everything when you're trying to also build a repeatable commercial business. So we've tried to focus on neurodiversity and the therapists and special educators that are focused on that population, and to build that critical mass of content, but also to work on some of the really important issues, especially on the healthcare side, with reimbursement, because ultimately that's a key piece of addressing accessibility and affordability.
You've come a long way, but you had to have some real challenges in the beginning. Now, when we talk about this just makes as much sense as, a cup of coffee in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the kind of pushback that you got when you first started to pitch this harebrained scheme of, using VR with children and with children with special needs?
The I think the two flavors of feedback, and I think bringing up Dorothy Strickland is apropos, is that one was, I don't think these kids will wear the headset, period, right? So that was one. And then the second was that, I don't like these kids. These are kids who need, I think the way, if I was to put myself in the shoes of the critic, the other thing that we would hear is, I don't think screens are the answer to teach neurodiverse kids how to interact with other people in the real world.
Yeah. I remember that was a common criticism in when there was a world built in Second Life. I think it was called Brigadoon, and it was a gathering place for folks on the spectrum that had difficult time in everyday life talking to people, but all of a sudden they're unleashed in this avatar-based space. And I remember somebody saying, "Oh, well, that's what all they're going to do. They're never going." And it's like, come on, what are they doing otherwise, for one thing? And do you doubt that having some practice, and whether it's you thinking about it as an exposure approach or as a skill building approach, giving them this opportunity, until it's detrimental, this is an opportunity that they're not going to get to maybe learn things in a digital context that transfer to the real world.
I think in general, one thing I've really learned, which took time as a parent, I think when you first are in those early stages of a diagnosis and what does this mean, and everyone has a vision of exactly how their child is going to mature and blossom, and you now receive news that challenges that mind's eye roadmap you had, which was never going to be true no matter what. The challenge is, you might have set notions of what is healthy or enjoyable behavior, what is, I think the biggest lesson is, listening to the neurodiverse, allowing them to speak on what they find enjoyable and interesting, and often, and I think with my son, if he's enjoying something, I go with it, because that's the validation of it, and he learns immensely through videos on YouTube, through VR, through other mediums that might be metered in someone else's household because it's screen time. But it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's positive time.
Yeah. When when you were first getting started, was it a hard sell with investors, or did you find other like investors who also had maybe a child on the spectrum that got it? Or
it's been interesting raising capital and finding investors. We definitely are really lucky to have a number of investors that either have a tie to in their personal life to neurodiversity, and or have a thesis around mental health and the need for in the area. I would say that our first round of capital, it came more in some ways easier because the VR industry was hot in like 2017, and then it tailed off. We were fortunate that Penumbra, which is a really visionary, larger company, led our seed round, and saw, even though we were in a different space than stroke, saw the similarities and saw the traction that we were starting to get. I think we're at the stage now where people are looking to see the potential of a very strong business that goes with it. And so we're really working on some of the fundamentals around what is a SaaS enterprise business with hopefully reimbursement helping fuel adoption. And so there's a lot of effort on the nitty gritty. I would say that the challenges I run into with more institutional investors are a perception that the neurodiverse community is small, or that the pediatrics is small, or the combination of the two. And so it usually comes from a place of not fully understanding the amount of both energy and money spent on helping develop new skills and allowing for life success to independent living and college and all the goals that parents have for children. The second thing that we've run into in the middle years has been that VR wasn't going anywhere. And I think, with Meta and Microsoft's commitment and things happening now, that's less of an issue. But I think there's still a lot of skepticism in the healthcare space that you can get the kind of adoption you need to have a strong business. And our goal is to prove them wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I can tell you some war stories from back in the early part of the century about that. Actually, the first version of the classroom, beyond the lab version, was funded by a test publisher, old company called the Psychological Corporation, now part of Pearson. And, they invested in developing a decent version built on an Unreal, really well done version. And clinicians loved it. The data was obvious in terms of the value of testing attention in this format. But when we ran focus groups at National Academy of Neuropsychology, International Neuropsych Society, everybody loved it until they got to the last question, and that was, well, would you be willing to spend $10,000 for a specialized computer with advanced graphic card and a head-mounted display? And everybody kind of like, I don't know, maybe my Tova is going to be good enough, but that was 2003, and things have changed dramatically. And a lot of times people say, well, you always hear the VR is dead, it's a fad. We've seen these hype cycles. Yeah. But I like to tell people that, if all of a sudden all advancement and development in VR ceased, we're at a sufficient level of the technology to be able to do great things where we are now. Of course, it's not going to cease. I mean, you just saw Zuckerberg walk through just yesterday or the day before, what some of the future Oculus product offerings are. And there's a variety of other companies that are, of course, on the same path. The innovation is going to continue. The costs are going down. Yeah. Tools are getting better. We're learning so much more. We've got a good scientific rudder to guide how we're going.
Absolutely. Even if you look at just the last 5 years from when we started the company in earnest and where we are today, the Oculus was not out yet as a consumer product. The Vive had required those laser trackers, had to be tethered to a $1,500 plus PC with a big GPU, and so, I mean, to go from that or smartphone-based VR, which is what we still use for legacy reasons, to where we are now with what you see out of the Quest or with HTC's experiential light headset. I mean, it's amazing what kind of form factors are coming out.
Right. And it's only going to continue to get better. What are some of the area that people don't think about a lot of times? They think about building an application, think about doing the science and the needs of the population. But as part of the needs of the population, what are some of the challenges with, say, onboarding, getting a child familiar with the technology and the strategies that you've developed in that area?
Yeah, great question. I mean, again, one of the biggest criticisms we got right off the bat was that I don't think kids will enjoy it. I don't think they'll see any benefit. If they do enjoy it, it won't be for their benefit, it'll be for entertainment. That was kind of roughly the critiques argument at the beginning. Our first study at the special needs school in New Jersey, Celebrate the Children, involved 12 kids going through 5 weeks of intervention 3 times a week. Our main goal was around safety and feasibility in the research to see if they would tolerate wearing the headset, that hopefully they would do more than tolerate it, but enjoy it, and whether we could use an adapted measurement to show that there was effect. And so in that I remember the first day that the teachers were using it, about a third of the kids showed hesitation putting the headset on. And teachers are beautiful because they adapt on the fly. They deal with the unknown and march forward in so many situations. In this case, the teachers within the first day had come up with a handful of strategies that we've now formalized for others. They quickly learned that if you can have one kid watch another kid in VR, they're more likely to put the headset on and try it out themselves. because we have a coaching app that runs on an iPad and shows a view of what the child is seeing in VR, they use that coaching app as another means of showing, this is what you're going to see when you put the headset on. That helped. They found that in this population, some of the kids, if they were just touched on the shoulder or the thigh while they were going through the lesson, it would help with stimulating them and helping them feel grounded. And so those three come to mind almost immediately, and helped. We also created some demonstration experiences that ended up becoming very important in the study, even though they were not part of the study design. We have a xylophone experience where you just use your gaze to play the keys on a xylophone. It's very, very calming. It's very simple. But as a starter experience, it was a really good way to allow the child to get a sense of what being immersed and having the display update in real time as your head moves feels like, in a completely non-threatening way. And so that was used, and some of the kids started asking for that as a reward, that if I go do all of these things, can you let me do the xylophone at the end? So there was also opportunities where, if you create educational or therapeutic experiences in VR, if you can also build some entertaining experiences, there's ways to potentially pair those together. And you can, again, let the therapist and special educator figure out the right combinations to get the most out of the child, but you can do both and be able to do that. And so we have now, as part of our onboarding, we have a great director of customer success. We have a training process that every new customer goes through. And then we have materials. One of the other things that we also developed is we actually developed a simple comic book that is a couple of pages and just shows what you're going to go through in VR. So we've tried a lot of different techniques to acclimate the individual to the experience they're going to go to. And at this point in that study, we had a 98% therapy session completion rate across the 5 weeks of intervention on the 12 kids. And we were able to see clear quantified improvement in 10 of the 12 kids. We were able to publish in JMIR Pediatrics and Parenting on the results. So that first study really buoyed us that we were ready to do more. And thankfully, the NIH-sponsored research with Children's Philadelphia has further, shown that the system leads to effect, and it's not only tolerated but enjoyed. And now we have the benefit of customers using it out in the field.
That's great. I think, you bring up a really important point here about, the core principle of design when it comes to this stuff is user-centered design, that in these cases, the users, are of course the kids that are using it, but they're also the teachers or the clinicians, and getting their feedback about implementation. That's essential. You just can't foist something out on people and just think they're just you've got it right the first time.
It's absolutely right. And we spent the first year, so we did that first research that I just talked about in 2017. And then in 2018, we had 3 pilot partners using the system, providing feedback. And then that heavily influenced the latter half of 2018, the product changes we made before making it more widely available in 2019. And even then, there was more to learn. We launched in 2019 in the iOS App Store, seeing this as more of a consumer-like sale, and marketing it to parents. Saw a lot of enthusiastic parents download, but not stick with it. And learn from that feedback that while they can operate the system, they didn't know which lessons to play for what frequency and what duration. But through that consumer channel, we had teachers and therapists coming in, using it, and then asking for enterprise contracts and purchase orders, which we had never heard of until teachers started asking for it. And that led us by the nose that, we should focus on the enterprise. And that has led to, I think, the other thing that you're asking, like what is not seen, what's below the surface that's important for success, and the data collection and the reporting and the enterprise portal that we've built that allows customers to add accounts easily, especially in the telehealth scenario where you have to permission the family to be able to have an account. There's a lot of very simple seemingly simple efforts that you have to do to create that actual full workflow of usage.
Yeah, yeah. What would you say is your biggest market area? Is it in education? Is it with clinician? Is it with parents? Or is just all three work together?
We want to be successful in all three. Today, the majority of our business is in the healthcare therapy clinic space. So it's enterprise licenses that are licensed, per seat or per child, per month or per year, going out to therapy clinics that might be speech therapy clinics or applied behavioral analysis style therapy clinics, or other therapy clinics that are serving the neurodiverse. We do license to school districts, and we are trying to make that more of a focus going into this next stage of the company. And today, that's more similar to the therapeutic use case. It's the same product essentially, but we started to develop designs around what added features in the school space would make it more usable, especially in the enclosed classroom scenario, which is structurally different than a one-to-one therapist scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, I'm thinking about that in the same context that I'm seeing social group therapy opportunities. I'm seeing a lot of benefits from social group therapy in my own household. And someone who on Tuesday night sits in a parking lot while my son goes to social group therapy, it's logistically very tough on families, and it's an opportunity where we can use VR and telehealth style delivery to potentially create new products. So that's an area where I'm looking at as well. We do have a number of parents using the system. Any parent can come to the website and take a look at whether Floreo would fit them. We have this Why Floreo feature where you talk about some of the challenges you're interested in using Floreo for, and we organize our catalog and tell you whether we have existing content that's up your alley, and then you can go all the way to taking a subscription. We also have Medicaid approval in about 5 states, and we do for certain, if you're in some of these waiver programs, have avenues for Floreo to be accessed, and so that's something people can inquire. But right now it's the majority of the business on the provider side.
What are the when you mentioned some of the studies you've done, what are some of the core metrics that you've used to evaluate the effectiveness of these approaches? Of course, there's self-report, there's parent observations, there's behavior change. What seems to be
So in the joint attention study, we adapted joint attention measures that are primarily aimed at younger kids than who participated in the study, and adapted it to the age population, applied that pre and post to measure effect. In the police interaction, our NIH phase 1 study was a self-reported usability scale from the participants who were 12 and above. The phase 2A, which was the first randomized controlled trial, actually used real Philadelphia police officers. They interviewed the subjects of both the control group, which received the Be Safe video modeling therapy for police interaction, and the treatment group received Floreo. And they interviewed the participants 4 weeks after their last intervention. And then that was videotaped and then scored by the researchers at Children's.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What about working with various foundations? Like some of our early work was funded and supported by the Dan Marino Foundation down in Florida. We did a job interview training application. Still in
You'll be happy to know I had breakfast with some of the folks at the Marino Foundation just this morning.
Mary Parton.
So it was Mary's son was in town, and their lead engineer, Alban, and they're doing amazing work, and they've been pioneers in the space. There's so much to learn from what they've done and what they continue to do. They're working on some really cool stuff now too as well. So there's foundations have been important for us in the context. Some of them have become early investors, and then they've also helped promote the product. They've helped put us in touch with key people. So we've gotten so much help from the community. I think once they understand the mission of the company and how we're in it for the right reasons and that we're trying to do things the right way. And the supporters we have been just invaluable.
Wow, that's great. That's good to hear. Okay, I think we're 5 minutes away before questions. So let's jump off into the general field of VR.
Mhm.
I've got a couple questions I ask everyone.
Okay.
But one of them is, is there, from your meetings with people that are in this space now, you've gone to conferences, you've met other developers, other companies. Is there something special about this development community, or is there a set of personality types that dive into VR for clinical purposes?
Yeah, I mean, I think yes, I think so. You know, a large number of them start what they're doing for personal reasons, like I did. They have a connection one way or another. Either maybe it's a sibling, maybe it's a child, maybe it's their own personal experience. So I run into that frequently and often. I think the other thing is that they understand the possibilities of how immersion and presence can get that response and can teach better in different scenarios. And so there's that commonality. I think the thing that's always struck me is that as someone who worked at Amazon for many years, where we didn't really collaborate with other companies on things that were in the same field, it would have been seen as very competitive, and you would never talk to eBay or Google at the time. There's a high degree of solidarity and the belief that that rising tide will lift all boats, and so that we're trying to make an industry. And it still strikes me as really interesting how like the conference where we met at in Nashville, it's a very small conference. It's still a very small community where in short amount of time you can pretty much meet all the people doing interesting work in VR and healthcare. That won't be true forever, but
Right.
It's still and hopefully it won't be true in a couple of years at the rate we're going. But right now it's like that, which is very nice. It's
Like
it's a nice feel.
Yeah. I value my friendships with people across the community, because they're people that know, a lot of times they've seen how it was done in the past,
Mhm.
and we're discontent, and that kind of an energy is very positive. And like you say, it's very collaborative field. People share ideas and have this common purpose and vision. So I find it really, really valuable. I find it more interesting than being in an academic department sometimes in terms of the collegial the heart that's in it. Probably the closest I've come to it is my buddies that I played rugby with. There's a brotherhood there, and a sisterhood too. All right, here's another one that I like to ask folks: if you had unlimited funding and 2 years to spend it, what would you do?
Unlimited funding.
Yep, you could build anything you wanted.
Yeah, I think I am working on what to me is a dream job. So I mean, I don't want to give the trite answer just saying, well, I'm doing what I would do, but it is actually sincere that I am doing. I had the luxury of really kind of deciding what I wanted to do next when I left my last job, and really felt strongly about doing this. There's so many opportunities when I think about the metaverse and what you could be doing. I still think there's a great opportunity to build a great social product where friends can interact. And I know that's an area where Facebook and Meta are going to spend a lot of resources, and others who have but I wouldn't be surprised if someone who doesn't need unlimited money but can really grok all the aspects of what makes VR special comes up with a killer experience there. I think it's going to happen. But if I had unlimited funds, I would try to chase that. I think it's there. I think could be a great connector for society if it can be figured out. I mean, to that extent, I do buy into the enthusiasm that Meta has in developing the metaverse and what Mark has specifically for this. I think it's, I was sold after not just my son's experience, but my own early experiences, feeling terror when a dinosaur is coming straight at you, or feeling wonder when you're in a recreated art museum and able to see the pieces up close, like the Van Gogh experience in VR, right?
One of my favorites.
Yeah, and it's like you can see what's possible and how you can make the world smaller for so many people and allow them to access things they can't. So I'm really bullish on metaverse in general. I think there is a party collaboration play that someone's going to figure out an experience that works in this environment. I mean, this is on a totally low scale, but I've been playing using the group party function in the Quest to do mini golf and table tennis, and it's great. You can connect with people. You can do one-on-ones. There's great opportunities.
Excellent. Well, I can tell, even though I've only gotten through 1/3 of all the questions I wanted to ask you, we need another hour. I can tell you're a guy that wakes up every morning looking forward to going to work. And that doesn't happen to a lot of people in this world. So, folks that experience that joy and that feeling of opportunity every day when they know they're going to do something that is going to make a difference, and they love doing it. You're a very lucky guy, and I applaud your efforts, and I admire everything that you've done so far, and where you're heading in the future. I'll be watching closely, and who knows, maybe we'll find a way to collaborate on something.
Would love that. Thank you, Professor.
So I think I'm getting a sign that we're ready. We've got a few questions in the feed. And,
yes, we do, as a matter of fact. So we have a couple questions. Thank you so much, Vijay, for sharing. It's fascinating, so very, very interesting. And we do have a couple questions for you. One is from Gu Ming on YouTube Live, saying, Vijay, do you have any lessons to assist neurodiverse individuals with self-esteem issues?
We don't today, but it's a really important area that has been brought up. So, I mean, we'd love to think about that. And if the person writing in wanted to write into info@floreotech.com, our email address, or come in through our website. Like I said, we are aiming to publish content every month, and so and our catalog has been driven off of customer requests. What we do have today is we do have lessons on bullying. So we have lessons on how to handle bullying, different forms of bullying, different ways to ask for help from both adult and peer groups, and so those can help self-esteem. We also have lessons on that do assist in trying to make friends. And so those kind of get at, they're not specifically aimed at esteem, but they're aimed at many of the things that can impact esteem if it's not working out.
I think that's an important question, but also needs to be viewed from the perspective that I don't think there's going to be one app that's going to have this effect and transform someone's self-esteem. I think it's really an emergent quality that comes from empowering people to do things in these types of environments across the spectrum. And then that starts to emerge. And as you start to build in more of the social facilitation stuff, I think that's a byproduct. I don't want to say byproduct, but it's something.
No, I think you make a really good point. And I think this is worth, I mean, from my own observations as a parent, I'll say that accomplishment, succeeding in whether it's school or those basically, the self-esteem is an effect based on those items leading to it. So it's kind of a lagging indicator in some ways, or the output. And so I think helping neurodiverse children and adults succeed in life, however, whatever skills are needed into that definition, lead you towards there. I think for the writer, I think the question, as far as direct psychological content or psychotherapy content focused on that, we don't have that. We're really focused on the experiences and skills needed to succeed in life, and I think Professor Rizzo is right in that those then have the effects of things like self-esteem and confidence.
Great. Well, thank you. And now you said that you have about 200 different lessons. Is that
Yeah,
right?
that's
Do you,
right.
how are they divided up? Do you have certain categories that?
Yeah, so anyone can go to our website, floreotech.com. There's a top level navigation link called library,
Mhm.
and everyone can view the entire library and all the lessons. We organize these lessons by what we call skill category.
Mhm.
So skill categories can be like school social or safety or emotional regulation. So we have about somewhere between 15 to 18 skill categories, and then the lessons are organized based off of that. And so you can basically peruse what we have right now. And like I said, for those interested, if you use the Why Floreo link, you can actually say, hey, I'm interested for someone who has challenges with the following. And it asks a few questions based off of that. It lets you know what parts of the Floreo catalog could be applicable. And then if you want to continue, you can either have someone follow up with you or sign up directly.
That's great. Well, you mentioned that you really started the company because of your son, and so I was just wondering, is he involved, like with all of the new lessons that you're introducing? Does he try them out? Does he give a stamp of approval before you actually?
Less so these days. I think the good news is that we have a team now, and we have a lot of customers, and some of them are beta customers as well for new things. So it's he has great enthusiasm. Like I said, he considers himself an employee, and he's very specific too. He says he started in 2018. So he has, in his own mind, he has a point at which he had transitioned from someone who might be using it to someone who is part of the team.
That's great. That's great. And you had mentioned before about some of the challenges in terms of the people not sure whether they would use a headset or whatever else. With you know individuals with certain types of conditions, there can be sensory issues associated
Mhm.
with. And I was just wondering, within the neurodiverse community, if you experienced any issues as far as sensory issues, and then how you handled that.
Yeah. The acclimatizing techniques that Professor Rizza and I talked about earlier have been really key to giving the tools to the supervising adults who use the system to help acclimate. And so, a very small percentage like as I mentioned, in our first pilot study, we had a 98% completion rate in therapy sessions. In the NIH phase 1, which is 50 participants, we had over a 95% completion rate in sessions. So there is a number of people that don't like VR, but it's a pretty small amount from what we've seen. Now, is there self-selection happening before even trying it out? Because people are like, maybe I don't, I only am visible to what is happening either in our research studies or after it gets to our customers' hands. But my generalized observation is most kids, like, once they notice that there's animation in it and it screens, and given the very gentle design of the content, that we have a high degree of success with engaging kids.
That's great. And so now, with the educators and with others that kind of provide coaching, is there coaching that goes along with this? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so the Floreo system is a virtual reality experience, which today is primarily using an iPhone and one of these Google Cardboard style headsets.
Mm-hmm.
We work with iPhone 7s or above, and that the application can be downloaded from the App Store, and it connects over the network to an iPad. We work with iPad 2015s or later, and the Floreo app from the App Store on the iPad displays a coaching interface. So it's a VR app when downloaded to a phone, and it's a coaching app when downloaded to the iPad. And on the iPad, that coaching app allows the supervising adult to be able to see what the VR learner is seeing, to be able to manipulate characters in the lessons. And based on the lesson design, that might be delivering lines of dialogue, different actions. They might be performing some assessment functions. So some of our lessons involve the VR learner pointing or making other hand gestures and or verbalizing something. And so the coach is able to use the iPad to play that coaching role. There's data collection that happens that also can then inform our recommendation engine and what the next lessons should be, as well as power some of the reports that we provide that are valuable to educators and clinicians.
Okay, and so is there a special coaching section? I mean, that they have to go ahead, they have to learn ahead of time, training in advance, or is it just on the iPad as they work with the learner?
Yeah, so it's on the iPad. We offer training sessions to the therapy clinics and school districts that license the software. For individual parents, we have pre-recorded videos that they can watch to get trained up. It's as I mentioned to Professor Rizzo, the coaching app is designed so that anyone can use it. And so it can be a parent, it can be a sibling, it could be a student aide in a class setting. They don't have to be a fully trained therapist to operate the coaching app to to decide which lessons are appropriate and to what duration. That can often require more expertise. And that's why in states like Wisconsin, where we have long-term waiver approval, we're also providing parent training and allowing a therapist to be able to guide the parent on an appropriate lesson plan for a week or 2 weeks and then check in again. Those types of patterns seem to work really well to providing the support a parent needs.
Great. Now, one of the things is, how long does it normally take for a neurodiverse child to master a skill, or how do you determine that?
Yeah, it's really unique to the individual. The lessons are designed to be played over and over again. Where appropriate, we use randomization techniques as well with dialogue and other things so that the lessons are not memorizable and require someone to really try to get the skill down. It really varies. I think generally speaking, it can be weeks on a particular skill area. So there is repetition of lessons that happen. There's sequencing and things that our recommendation engine helps suggest. But often, if it's in the hands of a therapist, they're using their professional judgment to blend Floreo into a curriculum they already have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
I've got a real quick one here. What comes after VR? What's your view on augmented reality when we finally get to a level where it's doable? I mean, realistically doable. Do you see opportunities for having these glasses in everyday life and providing prompts, training in the real world?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Yes, I'm really excited about AR. I think it'll open up a lot of cases where real-time assistance can be really benefiting the neurodiverse with filling in the things they need. I don't know whether that'll be what our company does, but I think it's for us. I think the one very near-term possibility with AR is that there's quite a bit of research showing that if you can take a skill learned in a VR or animated environment and transition it to the real world, and the research I've seen has involved toys being modeled after what you've done in VR and having the child play with the physical toys that represent the thing they learned in VR, that can be a stair-step approach that leads to generalization and the skills. I think AR presents the possibility of those techniques, which today are more impractical because you would have to potentially produce physical versions of the characters that you have in VR and have that distributed as toys to everyone who's a customer. That suddenly opens up the possibility that you can be creating some of these physical world transitions. Researchers would have to prove out whether that's as effective as having a literal stuffy toy that matches what you did. But my guess is that it probably would prove out, if done the right way, to be a really important way to transition.
Well, great. Thank you so very, very much. I greatly appreciate the time that you have spent with us. It's been amazing.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's been an honor.
Yeah. So let's, what I'd like to do is once again, thank you for joining the viewers here. Thank you for joining the event, the Tech Meets Mental Health series. and our special speaker today, who was truly amazing. Such an interesting story, and just wish you the very, very best of luck as you move forward in the future. Which I don't think you need luck. You've got everything going. So I hope you've learned a lot from Vijay today. And again, thank you to our host, Dr. Skip Rizzo. So for our audience, the video recordings of this event will be available on our YouTube channel. So please feel free to share this with anyone who might be interested in the topic. And we look forward to seeing you again at our next event and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.